Howdy YouTube, welcome to the latest episode of Down Home Gaming with Andrew. Today I want to talk about a couple of games with very different premises, but very similar gameplay. One of my favorite games growing up was Sierra Online's Oil's Well, which was released for the Atari 8-bit in 1983 and ported to other computer systems at the time. It was one of the countless dot-eating maze games at the time thanks to the enduring popularity of Pac-Man. However, it had one twist. Your Pac-Man figure, which represented an oil drilling bit, would leave a trail of pipe behind it. The maze is full of gremlins called Uzis, which will attack the pipe. What this means is as you go deeper into the maze to get the dots in the lower tunnels, you're exposed to an increasing amount of risk. This to me was a unique take on Pac-Man. The game even looks a little bit like Pac-Man with the drill bit and some of the monsters. But it turns out there was another game which was a more direct inspiration for Oil's Well, a little known arcade game that I will also cover in this video. I will start with Oil's Well, which despite technically being the home clone, ended up becoming much better known than the game that inspired it. Oil's Well was one of the first games I got with my Atari 8-bit. It's also one that my mother liked to play as well. So, let's take a look. Alright, this is Oil's Well, one of my favorite Atari 8-bit games. I played it on this channel, but at that time I had a much more primitive recording apparatus than I do now. I didn't have a microphone, so now I've got a microphone and a portable recording studio, so I'm gonna revisit this game. Anyway, my mom and I used to play this together, so it's special to me in that way. She really liked this game. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. That flashing mineral at the bottom of the screen, each level has one of those. Temporarily slows down the gremlins. That flashing thing is called a goblet. It's worth 1,000 points. Also does not harm your pipe. Yeah. The object is to, in addition to eating the dots and grabbing up the goblets, you also have to avoid having your pipe eaten by little gremlins. The gremlins increase in value the deeper you go, from 20 points to 170 points. I'm getting a lot of goblets this time. Now that you don't want to go after, that's a bomb, and it will destroy your drill bit if you touch it. With the drill bit, however, it won't hurt your pipe. This game is pretty random at how it disperses goblets and landmines, and each life's got a time limit, so you can't spend too much time farming points. Yep. You get an extra life every 10,000 points. Anyway, I better finish up this level or I'm going to lose this life I just got. Alright, so every level gets a little bit more complicated with more rows. See if I can get that goblet before it goes. Nope. But I can get this one. Alright, the oil gods are smiling on me this game. Alright. Keep them goblets coming. Now I better try digging deeper. You can kind of see how this game gets hectic, because a lot of times when you start trying to really dig deep into the maze, another gremlin shows up to try to eat your pipe. Anyway, that Pac-Man figure is meant to be a drill bit. And that's what happens if you mess up. Sometimes the controls, just like with Pac-Man, sometimes the controls are a little fiddly on modern controllers for these kind of maze games. I'm just gonna have to, at some point when its maze is relatively clear, I'm just gonna have to take my chances and go down there. And since only one gremlin at a time can be on a row, sometimes it's better just to let them go by. See if I can... Yeah, this is getting a little bit frustrating, but... I tried to go for broke and it didn't work out. Alright. Gonna move on to level 3. Back in the 80s, oil exploration was a big thing. You know, Dallas was the hottest show on TV. You know, Americans were glad that they didn't have to sit in gas lines anymore. I think even a lot of kids' books touched on the oil exploration boom of the 80s. Alright. All done with this maze. Graphics in this game are pretty nice. Mazes change every couple of mazes or so. The gremlins are colorful. There's a certain color gradient effect in the Atari 8-bits. I forget what it's called, but you know, it causes the gremlins to change colors the further down the maze you go. Alright, let's go ahead and grab the... Alright, so far so good. Not getting a lot of goblets this time. If you eat one of the flashing dots while there's a goblet or landmine on screen, it'll fry them. So you want to try avoid doing it if there's a goblin on screen. Which I just fried a goblet, unfortunately. But that's okay. I need to work on getting these dots cleared up, or I'm going to lose this life due to timeout. Alright. Really... Nope, got it just in the nick of time. Now at this point the mazes start getting really complicated, and there's now the maximum number of gremlins in each maze. did I lose the life I just got, but I missed out on a chance to get 1,000 points from the gauntlets. See, and that's kind of what I mean about the controls in these maze games. Sometimes you end up turning a direction you don't want to turn, which you can't backtrack on the pipe. You have to press the fire button to retract. That's one danger that the landmines can pose. Even though they can't hurt your pipe, they can end up trapping you in a situation where you're gonna lose a life either way. I don't know if that was the case though. It could have just been me being careless. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to level 6. So the mazes are getting quite complex now with all these little twisty tunnels that put your pipe at greater danger of getting eaten. Alright, I don't want to get trapped there. That area is kind of hard to get to because it's kind of hard to maneuver your drill bit in those particular passages. I don't think I'm gonna be able to complete this maze before that life dies out. Alright, let's cook up that, destroy that landmine at least. Alright, at least they got the deeper tunnels out. Alright. Well, this is getting off to a good start though. Goblet. Level 7 has a shaft that goes straight to the bottom. It leads right to the flashing pellet for the level. Doesn't make it any less difficult because now all the passages on either side of the shaft are pretty twisty and narrow. But it does mean it might as well get all these hard to reach tunnels out. That bottom row is completely filled in with walls, so you can't really get to it. Any goblets down there are lost to you. And I better hurry up. Alright, that'll do nicely. Always love the sound effects in this game. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was about to lose that life anyway. I was just trying to see if I can get a hold of those dots. That's one thing this game really challenges you to not only look at where you're going, but watch where you've been. You can still get hurt that way. Alright, we're almost done with level 7. Yep, here comes another gremlin. And another one. Alright, let's move on to level 8. Yep, now level 8's really complicated, and there's 2 places that are extremely hard to get to, and since you only have one flashing dot, you have to really time your attempts to go at one of those hard to reach places. That place down on the right hand side is one of the hard to reach places. But you really need that dot for the passages way down at the bottom because... Alright, let's see if I can, how much of these I can clear out. I've actually done pretty good at this level, everything considered. Yep, got a little overzealous there. But that's okay. Part of what makes that part of the maze difficult again is the controls. Alright, well, I about got this maze cleared out. I like how every level your refinery gets more and more sophisticated. Like now I've got a big huge office building. Alright, well I gotta be careful. Let's see if I can make a run at those last dots at the bottom. Unfortunately, even with the flashing dot, you have to kind of take a chance there. And you can't go through that little gap there either. It's basically just there for the... Alright, well here we go. We're going to go ahead and clear this maze out. Alright. And that's the end of level 8, which is the final level in the game. And you get a little mini ending screen. And you go back to level 1. But now the gremlins are a lot faster. And the mines are a lot slower, so that kind of changes the dynamic of the game. Makes it much harder to get down to deeper levels. So every time you try, then more trouble shows up in the upper levels. You have a lot less time to deal with it because the enemies move a lot faster. Alright, let's go for broke. Clear out all these lower tunnels as quickly as we can. Retract into that bomb. Okay. So we'll go out and finish off this level. This level's kind of hard because the vertical shafts that are close to the edge of the screen where the gremlins just pop up all of a sudden. Sometimes it's better to let the scope ones below you just go by, because there's only one gremlin per row at a time. That could have been a bad situation. Yeah, might as well farm a little bit of points here. Alright, let's move on to level 3. Yep, not today, Gremlin. Not today. And I'm gonna do some point farming. And I'm just gonna move on to level 4. When you're playing this game, one of the objects is really just keep on trying to eat dots when you can. Even when things are relatively calm. Just try to go after dots when you have the opportunity to, because that increases the chances you'll be able to complete the level without losing a life. Alright, moving right along here. These kind of hard to reach pellets out of the way. Okay. Barely squeaked up. Sometimes this game glitches out. Not sure what causes it, but every once in a while it'll kind of glitch out like that. Because that shouldn't have happened. Alright, well, I'm running low on lives. Alright, well, I'm pretty dangerously close to losing my last life. Which, that's okay, I've done pretty good, so I'm gonna see how far I can get. Which apparently isn't all that far. Alright, well, that's Oil's Well. So, said one of my favorite games on Atari 8-bit, one I still enjoy playing because it's, fun and fast-paced. If you ever have a chance to play it, you should. Alright, let's move on. Oil's Well may have looked like Pac-Man, but the game that inspired it had a much different look and theme. In the original game, instead of being an oil rig drilling for oil pellets, you were an anteater eating ants and larvae in an anthill. This game, appropriately enough, is called Anteater. Anteater was programmed by Chris Oberth for Tago Electronics in 1982. It wasn't as well known as Oil's Well because Tago was a small arcade company, while Oil's Well was published by the largest computer game publisher in the world at the time, which was Sierra Online. Yes, that's Sierra. Therefore, Oil's Well had a much healthier marketing and distribution push behind it than Anteater did. Oberth would go on to make his own home version of Anteater for the Atari 8-bit line called Andy the Aardvark. And speaking of which, that pesky blue aardvark is back again trying to catch that ant. And while he's doing that and hopefully not destroying the farm in the process, we will be taking a look at Anteater. Alright, so this kind of tells you all the obstacles in Anteater. And then you get a demo that tells you how to play the game. But same basic idea as Oil's Well. You're trying to eat all the dots, but you've got a trail behind you. It can be attacked by enemies. Okay, you have to be kind of careful about the worm. If you touch the worm's head with your tongue, then you lose life. And then dropping down on the worm sometimes kind of tricky because the game's a little finicky about what counts as the worm's body and what counts as the worm's head. Also, the worm can trap you in a situation, kind of like the landmines can, where you're going to lose a life either way. Now the queen ants at the bottom clear out all the enemies on the screen. And like in Oil's Well, there's a time limit, but in this game the time limit's enforced by the spider, which appears as soon as the sun goes down. And that song that plays when you clear a level is, of course, Edvard Grieg's in the Hall of the Mountain King. He actually had an entire video game dedicated to his music on the Atari 8-bit called Mountain King. And a lot of what I learned about classical music when I was a kid came from Warner Brothers cartoons and video games. You know, video games use classical music because, you know, they're public. Classical music's usually public domain. Alright. Now, the way time limits work in Anteater compared to Oil's Well necessitates kind of a different strategy for Anteater. It's often better to clear out the upper levels of the maze because the spider pops out in the upper levels. Alright. And we'll go ahead and clear out the second anthill. Alright, in the Hall of the Mountain King. Alright. I only have one life left. I'm still not quite at 20,000 points yet. So I have to be really, really careful. Just like in Oil's Well, modern controls are sometimes kind of fiddly with this game. It just seems like, you know, modern day controllers just don't handle cornering in games like Pac-Man or Anteater. But I'm actually doing pretty good. This game is... Anteater in some ways is tougher than Oil's Well, part of that being because it's a arcade game designed to extract as many quarters out of you as possible. But alright, so I'm going to go ahead and enter my initials here. And we're going to give this another go. So, I mean, they're very similar games, but certain ways in which they're designed necessitate different strategies, which is, you know, pretty good. Also, Anteater's mazes are procedurally generated, whereas Oil's Wells are handcrafted and don't change from game to game. That's one other difference between the two of them. Alright. Go ahead and snatch up those ants and worms. You know, the ants and the worms set up a multiplier. Number of ants times number of worms times 10. Alright, here comes some more ants. See if I can finish out this ant hill. Alright. In the Hall of the Mountain King. Alright, ant hill number 2. And that's kind of a dangerous thing to do because, you know, the hit detection in this game isn't always precise, and sometimes it'll register a deadly hit on a worm rather than a good hit. Alright. Yep, here comes more ants. That poor anteater. Yeah, poor anteater's as hapless as the one in the old Pink Panther cartoons. Alright. One more life. Alright, let's get down there and see if I can't get these last bits of ant larvae. Alright. Whoa. Almost ran into disaster that time. Oh, and those worms down at the bottom are, you know, they look like inchworms, but they're considered ants for whatever reason. Alright. Have to be careful here. Yeah, that was not a good situation. Alright, but I did pretty good that time. Alright, let's do one more game. Ooh. That did not get off to a good start at all. this game's not going too well. And then the sun also doesn't reset when you start a new life, so that makes it even more challenging. Alright. I'd better hurry up. Yep, didn't quite get it that fast. Alright, one more time. That's it. See if I can do better this time. Last time was kind of poor. It's not going to be a good situation. And here comes another one. Ants are not making it easy to get down there and clear out them tunnels. And here comes the spider. So I guess I better get down to the deep tunnels and oh, that's not good. That's one of the bad things about the worms, is they can trap you in a bad situation. The worms also spawn on the same level the tip of your tongue is at, so... Alright. Okay, I need to get down to those deep tunnels. Get to that. Yeah, I'm not gonna make it. I only have a few more ant larvae left. Alright. See if it can at least last long enough to get my extra life. So I now have one more chance to try and clear anthill number 3. Oh, and those green worms at the bottom count as ants, you know, for whatever reason. Not today, spider. Alright. I may actually be able to do this. Alright, just got 2 more. Alright, anthill number 4. This is the best I've ever done in this game. Yeah, just barely got that in time. Better move it. Probably not going to make it out of this level, but you know, that's okay. Alright. That's the best I've ever done at this game. So, all in all, I think that went pretty well. Okay. Alright, so that's Anteater. Yep. Yep, a similar game to Oilswell with some important differences, but very good game in its own right. So, as we've seen, despite their very different themes, these 2 games had similar gameplay. With that said, these games also added a nice twist on the tried and true Pac-Man formula by combining it with a trail that could also harm the player. Unfortunately, both of these games have faded into obscurity, which is a pity. They are retro classics worth playing, but unfortunately they're kind of hard to find. However, I am glad I get to share them with you. So as always, thanks for watching Down Home Gaming. See you next time. Alright, Aardvark, be careful about getting that ant.